So as we can see, back line's here, defending, they're 4 back. Portland's starting to drive in. And you can tell from this moment that their attacker is ready to either A, shoot, or B, play a ball in. And based on the distance she is and where Kaylin is in goal right now, it is most likely she's not going to try to shoot out from there. It's not a high percentage shot, so she's more likely to try to play in one of these two players as a receiver on the pass. You take notice here that Kaylin is not flat on her line waiting for a shot. She's a little higher because she knows she can protect that area, but she could also maybe come out if she, say, needs to be preventative. As that ball comes through, you can see in this moment she's ready to come. She realizes, okay, she could shoot it here. I need to be set. So there was a moment of, I'm coming out. Okay, I'm ready to get set. She now knows this runner's here because of the setup we were here first. She had 2 runners in that could be receiving of that pass. She knows that runner's there, but she has to get set and respect that this could be a shot. But as soon as it becomes a pass, she's turning her body and immediately taking off, which brings me to point number 1. So I'm going to give you 3 main points that I'm going to talk about throughout these clips. 1 is follow the principle. You want to prevent when you can, but react when you must. And we see that really well right here. So take it all the way back. If this happened to be a shot, she was ready to react if she must. She was ready to prevent based on a through ball, but then she saw that it could be a shot, so she was ready to react if she must. She saw her opportunity to come out and prevent, and she fully committed and took off into her spread, which ends up being an incredible save from 6 yards out on what looked like could be a wide open goal. Now, with that being said, I'm going to bring you to my second point, which I'll talk about throughout these clips, which is there are early cues you can read that tell you I can be a shot preventer. The early cue for me here is a through ball. No one has full control of this through ball. Can I come out? Nope, I can't. And I have defensive pressure, but that's a whole nother podcast. As soon as she says, okay, this ball's going to be between us, I don't have a lot of distance to cover. Those are early cues that I know kind of leading into this. And look at the body shape of the attacker and where the ball's going to land. Okay, an early cue for me is I can put enough pressure on this that she has to hit it on one time. And even if it doesn't hit directly off me, I'm going to force her into a high pressure finishing opportunity, which is a little bit more difficult to handle. Finally, I'm going to bring you to point number 3, which is, can you get your weight in your front foot? Almost coupling with that is starting position. Can I start a little higher? Not so high that I'm giving something away in terms of shot stopping, but starting a little higher so that I almost deter an attacker from playing the through ball. Or if they do play the through ball, I'm ready to come out. And pairing that with being weight on my front foot helps me get into this running position that you're going to see right here. So she's here, weight in the front foot, ready to push off and be preventative. Because as we know, or as we've talked about in the past, when we talk about shot prevention, it's really important to push off from far enough away that you're not allowing the attacker to gain ground on that ball, or you're going to be able to use your push to drive into said ball. So that one's one of my favorite clips. I still have 2 more, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about those points that we have that could help you as well with your shot prevention. So this next one is still playing with her club, the San Diego Wave, and we can see the ball right here at half field. And again, it'd be very low percentage chance to score from here. So we can probably make an educated guess that this is going to be more of a big ball in behind. And the nice thing about a big ball in behind is we know, 1, from this position, we can go to point 3, which is starting position a little higher and weight in the front foot. We can do that because there's always time to retreat, but it also gives us more advantage if we did want to shot prevent and come forward. Another thing we know is that this is probably intended for runners. So knowing what those runners are and what their runs may look like and following the flight of the ball could help me decide what early cues are helpful. So this ball is played in the air. We do not see the goalkeeper until this moment. So we don't know her exact starting position or if her weight's in her front foot. However, by the moment we do see her and the ball is taking its first, second bounce, we can tell she's halfway through the 18. So more likely than not, she chose to already come out as that ball was traveling. She looked for early cues of, okay, there's one runner. I have 3 defenders. There's 2 late runners. I'm going to come out because I think, principle number 1, I can impact this ball with a shot prevent. I'm going to let it play out. I think something that's important to note is she has the defensive pressure. She might feel more inclined to come out knowing that they can come in behind, but that's a side note. I think the biggest thing on this is principle number 1, which we just ended with, which is if I can shot prevent, I'm going to impact the ball when I can. I'm going to react when I must, rather than let the attacker gain control. Back in this moment, where this ball wasn't directly to her feet, it's not very comfortable to bring down on the bounce, rather than let her gain control and have to let her get comfortable and me be less comfortable by reacting would be difficult. So the fact that she saw these early cues of, okay, I can come out, the ball's going to slow down because as it hits the floor, it takes a little bit off it in this scenario. And I'm going to commit to putting that pressure on, letting my defenders drop in behind me and push off from far enough away that I can force pressure on her to have the shot earlier. And I think that's a big thing about looking for early cues. If I want to shot prevent, I have to be reading situations that allow me to do so. So a big ball in behind, a through ball. Sometimes it's a bad touch. Sometimes it's a deflection. But I think looking for those early cues and looking for things like attacker's body shape. Do I have recovering defenders? Is there extra runners in the box? Those can help me make a decision, sometimes a little bit earlier than if I let the ball bounce and the attacker get control and I didn't start coming out until this moment here. I think that allows her to have more time and give me less of an advantage and let her have maybe that shot that she's more selecting versus here, because Kaylin's already putting pressure on. She's forced into hitting that at that moment rather than taking a couple extra touches and being comfortable. So that's why principle number 2 is one thing that I talk a lot about in particular, like as goalkeepers are getting more comfortable with their shot prevention, I think it just gives them more freedom to explore, okay, when can I use this and when and where and in what situations is it most effective for me? So we're going to go to our final clip, our last clip of the day. This is only about 35 seconds of clips. And the last one is just, again, with the San Diego Wave. I think we can tell here, if you look at the attacker's body shape, she's most likely not shooting it. So again, like as a goalkeeper, you want to be looking for cues like that to tell you, okay, what's my starting position? Because I know I have 2 runners. This defender here is kind of like already running back. She's side on, and she's putting pressure on to kind of try to funnel and squeeze towards where she has her help. So as that happens, I know she's most likely not hitting this because of her body shape. And she's going to be playing it through. I'm looking to say, okay, she'll be isolated. What could I do to help me impact the ball? Because once more, that's our number 1 overarching principle. If I can impact the ball, I want to. I'm only going to react when I must. So the early cue is the through ball. We know Kaylin was not on her line just based on the fact that she's already here as this ball is being driven in towards the top of the 18. We see this running position. Now, I can't lie to you and tell you that I know if she was already in a runner stance, but I can tell you that it would help in this moment if she was, just because we can't see her starting position. But if she started in a runner stance here, it just aids in this movement that she's starting to do to get towards the attacker. And you can see that this is about the moment she's ready to almost push off into that ball. And just like the last time, those early cues of knowing what the first person on the ball, aka, the assist player in this moment can do or is capable of. Can she shoot? Most likely not. So what's this going to be in this scenario? A through ball. I'm going to be weight on my front foot. I'm going to be a little higher off my line, because if she chooses to shoot it, I could still, set back and get balance to react. If she chooses to drive forward, I'm going to take some space. I'm going to decide I can impact this ball and push off from far enough away and force her into a shot maybe she's not ready to have, or force her into a shot that goes right into me. Those are the 3 clips I have for you. And I think all of them there's some similarities, but all of them look a little bit different in how the play evolved or where the play evolved from. And I think that it's really important for us to have an idea of what we're looking for when we're in these scenarios. So I'm just going to take it back to the 3 things that I have for you in terms of how you can apply and use shot prevention maybe a little bit more in your game and try it out this week in practice. Or if you're a coach listening to us or watching, following along, maybe you can try to replicate some situations like this and encourage your goalkeepers to try these 3 things. But I'm going to break it back down for you, cycle it back to those big 3, and leave you there for our first ever video review podcast. I don't know. Is it still a podcast when there's a video to follow along with? Maybe. I don't know. So 1, follow the principle. Impact what you can, react when you must. So if I can come out and put pressure on this ball and it's something that I can turn into a shot prevention, I'm going to, because that doesn't only mean that I gain a little bit of favor, but it means the attacker gets a little less favor. And whether it be they get a worse shot selection, whether it be I force them into something they're not comfortable for, whether it be I make the save or I make them miss or my defenders have time to get back and recover, I think that's more than worth it. Great thing about that too is I'm still making the choice to react when I need to. If I do not think I can impact the ball, then I might just put a little pressure on and get set, or I might just get set, or I might just back set and get set. It's not saying everything has to turn into shot prevention. It's just saying that in the moments where I could, or I might even think I could, I'm going to try to, because I want to gain a little bit of favor in my save selection. So that brings me to point number 2. Can we look for early cues? Some of the early cues that could be really useful are body shape. They are, opportunities, aka do they have people they could pass to that might have a higher percentage shot to take or a higher percentage chance to have. It could be, where are my defenders? What kind of pressure is my defender putting on? Where on the field is this ball being played from in terms of like the through ball or the big ball over the top? All those things can give me really valuable insight as a goalkeeper into if I should come out and impact the ball, if my starting position could be a little bit higher, if I need to adjust a little bit of like what I'm doing with my set shape. So I think the more I can look for early cues and...
Welcome to the Keeper Institute podcast. My name is Tori Corsaro. I'm a strength and conditioning and goalkeeper coach here at the Keeper Institute and your host for today's show. The Keeper Institute is a unique goalkeeper training facility in New Jersey aimed at developing better goalkeepers and better people. On this podcast, we will be discussing all things goalkeeping, character development, and more. Welcome back to another episode of the Keeper Institute podcast. I actually just got a button, Kieran. So I wanted to...
I thought you were going to use it today.
I forgot until I just did it with my mouth there, the noise. All right. Well, I just told you who our guest is. It's the one, the only Kieran Burns. We are so lucky that he's with us again on the podcast. We've had a lot of requests to have him back, mostly from me and from him. But
yeah, from me, I asked a couple of times. I had to come back on. I had such a good time the first time.
Listen, honestly, if Jill gets too busy, I think you might be my next co-host. Like,
I would love to.
When she's in her busy time of year, it might just be Tori and Kieran.
Yeah, it sounds great to me.
This is a couple of brothers right here. We've been having a blast here, and I'm gonna do my bragging on Kieran, but before he takes away the topic, I'm going to let him do a lot of the talking, a lot of the leading here. We're going to do kind of what we did last time on the podcast, guys, and have some video clips to go through. That way we have a visual for you to talk about or to watch and follow along so that hopefully we can just hit all different kinds of learning styles. But Kieran has been absolutely crushing it lately at TKI. He is taking his coaching to the next level. The way he's analyzing the game, the way that he's coming up with new creative exercises to help our goalkeepers be the best they can be, but also the way he's been challenging himself to learn and grow as a coach and as an educator has been so much fun to watch. And I've just been having an absolute blast getting the opportunity to, one, watch him grow, but to work alongside of him. So without further ado, that's my little brother, Kieran, and I'm going to let him introduce today's topic.
So, you guys, today we're going to be talking all things half space. But first, thanks, Tori. That means a lot that you said that. And it wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for you being a great leader and just directing me the right way possible. So, we're talking all things half space today. I have a couple points written down that I want to go over. And obviously, we have some clips. But to start off, the half space is really difficult to deal with. I feel like it's really challenging for a lot of goalkeepers, even from the youth to the pro level. And there's a lot of different outcomes that can come from it. But if we stick to these principles that I have written down and a lot of us have came up with at TKI, I think it's a lot easier to figure out what to do depending on where the ball is in the half space or as it goes to the end line. So starting off, our goal is to impact multiple outcomes without sacrificing the ability to protect the goal. So it has to do a lot with positioning and positioning ourselves so we can maybe come and win the cross, or we can also defend the goal frame at the time, and just trying to figure out where the best position for myself to deal with all of the different outcomes would be the best suited for any goalkeeper. Next, I have a common one we talk about a lot at the facility is prevent when you can and react when you must. So obviously, if I see an opportunity to be a preventative goalkeeper with spread or smother or just trying to impact the ball, that's definitely super important. And if I don't think I can prevent, I'm just going to react at that point. Another 2 points I have, they're not nothing major, is just try to win the ball off the post when you can. If it gets down to the end line and just try to get a touch on it, I think it's a lot easier. And a few clips that I have shared that Tori's going to share with you guys or show on the screen. There's a few times that the goalkeeper maybe could have dove off the post to impact the ball as it got worked down the end line, and instead they just turned, and it was kind of an easy goal for the opposition. And the last one is don't leave the most dangerous area of the goal for a less dangerous area if you don't impact the ball. So kind of like just leaving the goal frame maybe in the wider area or towards the half space. And obviously the central area of the goal is a little bit more dangerous to get scored on. So if I'm going to leave for a less dangerous area, I want to be able to impact the ball. So all 4 of these should correlate to all the clips that Tori's going to show. And yeah, Tori, I'm ready whenever.
Let's hit it. Whoa. Screen. I'm an old lady, guys, and, you know, sometimes it takes me a little bit longer here. So we got my screen. It's a little messy here, but now you should be able to see. Oh, I don't want that whole thing. That's way too much screen. Maybe I have to open that window. Bear with me, guys. Technology is sometimes not my friend, I guess.
You'll get it. We're all good.
There we go. Just a window. That's all you needed was just this window. All right, Kieran, is that big enough?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. Are you ready for me to go?
Yeah, 100%. So I'll let you guys watch it if you're viewing it, and I'll just start explaining it after, and I'll give you my feedback. Tori will play it a couple times, okay? So it's a clip from Mandy. If you go back, I know they're all pushed together, but what I really like from Mandy here is she notices that her defenders are trying to put pressure on the ball. So she's in a great position. It's going back to one of my key points is like impacting multiple outcomes without conceding the ability to protect the goal. And right, I mean, clearly, if you watch the clip, she protected the goal very well. And if the ball gets served across the 6-yard box, or even if it somehow gets cut back to the player that's right to the left of her, she's still in a great position to be a shot stopper and as well impact the ball that maybe would come on the floor in the air towards the back post. And she makes a great save. Well done. I do have a lot of clips of Mandy. I think she's very good at this, and I'm also a big fan of her. So one of my favorites. She's very patient here, and she realizes that, again, she has 2 defenders there. One's very close to the attacker, and the other one can easily step if needed to prevent the ball from going across, or she's blocking a passing lane right now. And she seems super patient. She's not really urgent to put pressure on the ball since her defender's doing it for her, and she ends up just reacting from that point. So again, going back to one of my key points is prevent when you can and react when you must. And there I feel like she had to react, and again, she did a good job of just being honest at that near post.
I think something else, like another one of your principles that is huge at play here, is winning it off the post if you can. So, you know, she doesn't have the opportunity to be preventative because she doesn't want to leave the most dangerous area for something that right now her defender's kind of handling. Mm-hmm. And she does a great job of like, okay, because I chose to react and because I am patient, I win it at the near post. I force them to take that shot towards this near post, which is a way less favorable angle for them as the attacker.
Yeah, and I do see a lot of the times, just like even at the pro level, like some goalkeepers just get caught like anticipating the ball across, and they're not honest with their positioning. So what I really liked about this clip is you never really saw a slight lean to go towards the middle of the goal area, like to try to prevent the cross. she was just really reactive, and she was just waiting to see where the ball was struck till she made her action towards it.
Brilliant. Love that.
Again, another clip from Mandy, but she does really well here if you want to play it real quick. And if you could go back to the start, there's something I noticed after watching it a few times. She points, like, as you can see her on the screen, she starts to point to one of her defenders at the back post. She turns her head. So this is really critical if you guys are watching. I think it's super important as goalkeepers. We talk about, like, scanning in possession a lot, but I don't think it's talked enough about, like, scanning out of possession, like trying to recognize who's in the box and who's the most dangerous attacker and who do I have to be mindful of this ball going to. So she realizes there's two pretty late runners and the ball is advanced pretty far ahead of her two runners that she can maybe play the ball to. Her defender's putting pressure on the ball. She doesn't need to leave the goal frame. And she's not really as concerned as she would be if this player on Orlando City at the back post was in front of her outside back for the ball to be served across. So I just thought it was great recognition. And again, she's super patient and honest with the positioning. Now we get into just a few mistakes, in my opinion. Not trying to be harsh, but it goes back to one of our key talking points is we don't want to leave the most dangerous area of the goal for a less dangerous area unless our ability to impact the ball is there. So once the ball gets played inside, she leaves the goal frame, and if they slip a ball across, they got pretty lucky here that they didn't concede a goal, but she's not really impacting the ball here. And if she could, that would have been a great decision. If she can try to come and win this immediately and stop this ball from being played across, it would have been a brilliant decision. But instead, she gets left in, I guess, no man's land, where it's really tough for her to react because she doesn't have the time to make an action towards the ball. And she's leaving the middle of the goal wide open. And there's an attacker on Washington that's trying to get there, but luckily Portland does a good job trying to clear it off the line.
So talk to me real quick, Kieran. So your principle of, prevent when we can, react when we must. And in this moment, do you think as the ball slipped into the half space, she could choose to be preventative?
I mean, I think it really depends on the goalkeeper's strengths. If you're a really preventative goalkeeper and you feel comfortable doing that, if she carried her momentum, she probably would have had to take a risk and maybe impact the ball. But that's kind of part of the game when you're trying to be preventative, is seeing how risky you want to be. And if you feel confident doing it, I think if she carried her momentum, she had a chance to get there. And sometimes a chance is enough for them.
Yeah, and versus, like, if you're not going to go, why would reacting in a different positioning be, in my opinion, and possibly yours, important? Because right now she half chooses to go, but then her positioning is quite off to me. Well, if she's not going to go, what should she do as this ball slipped in?
I would just stay, I guess, like in your normal positioning to defend the goal frame, like a little bit closer to the goal line, maybe like just in front of the post, I guess, if I'm being particular. But that would allow her to have more reaction time to maybe cut this ball off that comes across. And she's just a little bit more comfortable in these wide areas. The attacker doesn't really have a good angle to score from. She's not necessarily making the goal any smaller for the attacker. So if she just stayed where she was on her line, the forward wouldn't really be able to score herself, in my opinion. It would either just hit the goalkeeper or she would just shoot it into the side netting. But since she takes space and doesn't impact the ball, she loses reaction time, and she doesn't necessarily gain an advantage. The goal is not getting any smaller, especially since the ball is in a tough angle to shoot.
Right, and I think something that's worthy to note is the sheer amount of defenders they have. So they're in a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 defender situation, right? This woman could get in front of her a little bit, I'm sure. That's 6. So really, they're still in a numbers up situation in this play. So taking the risk, if she's not sure she's going to get there, probably isn't worth it, especially going along with your principle of, like, you don't want to leave the most dangerous area for something potentially less dangerous that you're not going to impact. So I think that this one is spot on. And like you said, you're not trying to be critical or anything. It's just,
of course,
sometimes we want to learn from other people's errors so that we can grow through it and kind of experience it and work through what maybe we would have done differently in that situation for a learning opportunity as well.
Yeah, Jill said something yesterday that's brilliant. She's always filled with knowledge, and I feel like every time I get to work with her or like get to have a chat with her, I learn something new, which is great. But she said something yesterday in our session of like, if every time we make a decision, we have to gain an advantage. Like, what advantage are we gaining from this type of movement or this decision? And here, as she, like I said, as she closes space, she doesn't necessarily gain anything. She only loses reaction time and her ability to be preventative. So sometimes it's just relaying back to the principles makes it a little bit easier to understand and watch back after you maybe make a mistake.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. And you're right. She's always full of wisdom. All right, let's get to that next one. Let it clear out. Spirit got out of that one. And they're safe. Or sorry, Portland.
So kind of a similar idea here. The ball is it's just a slipped ball across on the floor. And as you go back, I'm pretty sure that's Alyssa Nair.
Yes.
So her like idea to retreat towards the goal is great. And the movement was perfect from here. I was like, I can't impact the ball, so I'm going to defend the goal frame. And then as the play develops, she just gets a little bit too close to her near post. So one, if the player on LA decides to shoot it, she's not really in the best position to defend the goal frame. And two, it's really hard for her, I guess, closed off stance in her positioning to impact this ball across, whether if she decides to spread as the ball gets played there to try to impact it, or even if she tries to turn and she tried to react, it was just tough because her positioning from the start was a little bit off. So from here, I would slide, I guess, to her left in the more central area of the goal to where she has a little bit.
You don't mean here. You're saying
no.
In a position.
Just a tiny bit, yeah. Like still on the angle, but a little bit more centrally than where she would be, I guess, right now.
Yeah, she doesn't be touching that.
Yeah, and since she's so close to the near post and she's so deep on her line on the angle, it's just really hard for her to do two of our principles that are super important, is defending the goal frame and the goal area. And just once the ball gets slipped across, she just doesn't really have a chance. So if she just adjusted her positioning and maybe had her hips facing the ball a little bit more and was a little bit more, I guess, centrally a tad bit, it would be easier for her to maybe, one, impact the ball that's played across, or two, be preventative when the shot was coming off of like a spread. That's what my choice would have been. I would have tried to spread into the 6-yard box as the ball got played across to try to be preventative on the shot coming on the goal frame.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And I think it's just worth noting, and you said this, right? Like, it's one of the first things I wrote down when you started talking was this is difficult. The half space just creates so much chaos and so much need to be decisive for defenders and for the goalkeeper. So that's why teams want to get in there. There's so many things you could do from the half space, whether it be take it to the end line and cut it back, whether it be drive in for a 1v1, whether it be create a combination play, whether it be cut it back into your inside foot and have a shot, whether it be kind of like clipped or smaller cross in, depending on where you are inside the half space. There's just so much variation of what could occur. And I think that's why sometimes positioning does get difficult. She has the right idea, drop back, defend that the goal, right? Wait to maybe defend the space. But from here, it's almost like, all right, I'm only worried about protecting one thing. Takes us back to your intended out or your first point of like, you want to try to impact or affect multiple outcomes. And in this case, you really have nothing but protecting that near post.
And it kind of goes back to, I guess, another point. It wasn't like a key point, but as the ball gets played through, because this was the original ball was a pretty like longer pass through to like break the back line. And if you scan a little bit earlier, like out of possession and recognize like where runners are, sometimes it makes your job easier.
Yep.
And as the ball gets played from the deeper area at the start of the clip, you could kind of tell pretty early that LA's only going to be able to get one attacker in the box, and she's making a central run. So my first idea is like, all right, if my positioning's good and I can't impact it, I kind of have an idea already in my head where the shot's going to come from. Maybe not exact, but I know she's not the back post. I know she's not making a near post run. I know it's going to come somewhere in the central area of the goal.
I know she has a defender putting on pressure here.
Yeah, 100%. And it, depending on the line of this pass, which was pretty threatening, I mean, it's right outside the 6-yard box, it kind of helps me understand where I could take my line to the ball to be preventative and impact it, whether if it's a spread or a smother, whatever you would like to choose there.
Right. And it gives you the ability to do that if you adjust your positioning, because right now the way she sets herself, it would be really hard to get into her spread or smother and be preventative there. However, if her hips were angled, that's a different story. And we're talking about being able to kind of like grab that ground and push into that preventative measure as well.
100%.
All right, Kieran. Looks like we're switching over to the men's game on this one.
Yeah, I had to get a Man City clip in here, but
Makes sense.
It's actually not Man City's goalkeeper. It's Allison. So it kind of it's the opposite of what we were kind of just talking about 2 clips ago. It's a great ball from De Bruyne. He plays it into the half space, but Allison recognizes pretty early that when he leaves the most dangerous area of the goal, he can prevent this ball. So it was a great decision, and there wasn't much risk here because he had a recovering defender. This was really the only dangerous player in the box as of right now. He has another center back covering the other run. And since he was so decisive and he took off early in his spread, it was pretty easy for him to prevent. And then the cross comes in. I'm not sure what happens after this. I clipped it, but
I think it's another good fill into one of your points of like, all right, can I save this on the near post? And I did, and I used my preventative measures to do it. And then it comes back out here, and he's in a position where he's being patient. He's got defenders back, and he's ready to impact what he maybe potentially can. He gets back on that near post, gets himself squared up, and then comes in. So
even there, if you go back, it's a little bit tricky if the people that are watching, this is something that I've tried to really think about, like when I'm coaching, is especially since he has 2 defenders there, this might be a case where my hips are a little bit turned and I'm not as squared off. It's definitely up for debate, but I just feel like he has really good coverage from his defenders on a ball that's played on the floor across, especially really close to the 6-yard box. But what I would really be worried about if I scanned and knew there was a player behind me, or even Jack Grealish with his arm up, I would be really worried about this ball that's lifted in the air.
Yeah.
So maybe my first thought would be, I don't know if this is going to come on the floor or it's going to come in the air. But when you're in the run of play like this after he already made a save, it's really difficult to
100%
to think that way and make these quick adjustments.
Yeah, one thing that I've been talking a lot about when it comes to half space and like as it transitions into end line service, goalkeepers have a lot of questions of like, when do I take my positioning from like, maybe being on the angle here or being a little bit more set into my goal to being butt level with this post and squared up. And for me, the easiest way to say it, and I don't think it's like super concrete and like black and white. There's not many things in goalkeeping that are, but as you get closer down this line, that's when I'm starting to come closer to my post. If you could pass it in, or if someone could tap it in there, I want to be protecting that area. So for me, if I was to draw an arrow from here with the tip here, I would say as it draws down that line, that's when I'm getting closer. Obviously, maybe like if there's no pressure here, that's when I decide, okay, how close are you getting? Can I be preventative? Kind of like Allison did in the first clips.
Yeah, and it's tough. Like I feel like when I look at this clip, especially the second part, which wasn't really my main goal of like showing it, but I would try to recognize like who is the most dangerous attacker right now.
Right.
And who would be the biggest threat. And like, since there's 5 Liverpool players in the front half of this 18-yard box, and there's no one really like, if there was a City player like in the middle of these 4 defenders, then I'd be really worried about it. But if De Bruyne cuts it back to Mahrez, who's at the top of the box, he has some coverage from Fabinho there who can maybe step and block the shot. But it's just, would be really concerned about the 2 runners at the back post, just because the right side center back, I guess, doesn't really know he's there. The outside back's not sure if he should cover either, which runner he should really try to cover.
Right.
And it gets difficult. It's definitely like up for debate. And I guess it also maybe relates back to what your goalkeeper's strengths are and what they feel comfortable with.
Absolutely. It also goes back to like why it's so important for goalkeepers to also understand the roles and responsibilities of their teammates, right? Like this is a situation that we faced a lot this fall in particular, where there'd be this back post runner and our weak side center back and weak side outside back were always like, do I call the midfielder back? But we shouldn't need to call our midfielder back. And this is why it's important to know your tactical and like formation approach as well, because you need to know who's picking these up. Because look at him right here. He's confused. Who should I go to? Who's more dangerous, right? And I mean, you don't want either of these players open. We both know that. So that just kind of goes in and could be a sidebar point of like, it's helpful to know the roles and responsibilities of your teammates so you can be directing information in these scenarios as well.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I think we're on our final clip, Kieran.
Yeah, last one. Oh, it's Mandy again.
Yeah, it is.
See, this is a great. I thought this was like one of the best clips I've seen of her that I've ended up finding or found on my computer and my phone. Is same idea. Like, it's a really dangerous pass. It was actually a great pass from the player on Spirit, but it's kind of just inside the half space. So, like, I guess in the bay on the line of the wide area in the half space, but she recognizes really early that this player is super dangerous and it's really tough. Going to be really tough for me to react. You're going to assume that the attacker on the Spirit's going to shoot it on one touch. So she just comes out and makes herself super big and spreads early and ended up making a really, really good save. But this one I liked because it wasn't as like deep towards the end line. It was kind of like an earlier ball. And I mean, Mandy's in really good position here. She's got pressure on the ball. The forward on Spirit doesn't really look like she's going to shoot the ball. So she's just trying to look and pick up runners. And you can see, again, she's pointing. She does a really good job of this in a lot of the matches and clips I've seen of her, is recognizing where the danger is before the ball is played in. And right when she sees it slipped, she makes a really quick decision because she knows that they're kind of like in a 2v1 essentially. Like, Utah's only got one player there that can maybe block the pass from being played through besides pressure on the ball. And immediately as it gets played through, she's super preventative. And it just goes back to another point of like, prevent when I can and react when I must.
I also love it too because from here, her positioning is so great. And for me, positioning is one of the most important parts of half space, right? Like,
it's one of the hardest, to be fair. Like, it sounds super easy, but it's really difficult.
Because if she chooses, I think she hits that with her. Yeah, she hits that with her left foot, like a little like dink pass. I don't know what you call a stab.
Like outside the foot or something. But
if she chooses to cross this, Mandy's in such a great area to come and win and protect the goal area. And like, that is ultimately what's so difficult besides the chaos. And the reason there is chaos from the half space is because could be a cutback, could be a cross, could be a slip ball for 1v1, could be a shot. So depending on where they are, where their runners are, and where the defensive pressure is, like, we have to be mindful of our positioning. And just going back to one of your, I think it was point number 2 or point number 1, you have to be ready to impact multiple outcomes without giving up too much of one.
And I think, like, if you go back to when before the player on Spirit like is gonna shoot it or like pass it, she kind of knows. I'm assuming she like, maybe someone watching is like, well, there's a lot of the goal that's open. But if the player on Spirit ends up pushing it on her right foot and then like the touch kind of looks threatening, like, she would have adjusted her positioning accordingly.
Right.
But since there's pressure on the ball, she was taking a chance that her defender would be able to help her out or maybe push her wider before she could shoot it. If there was no pressure on the ball, maybe she'd be a little bit more inclined to defend the goal because the player's wide open and continue to dribble towards it. But since her defender does a good job of stepping out there and trying to just show her towards the outside, it was a little bit easier for her to adjust her positioning for more of the ball or cross that's played in rather than defending the goal.
Brilliant. I love it. I think those clips are excellent and just such a great representation of your 4 points. So before we close up today, can you just go through your 4 points and remind everyone what they are? And yeah.
Yeah, of course. So the first one I had starting off was impact multiple outcomes without sacrificing the ability to protect the goal. So it all comes down to positioning, really. It's just being able to impact, like Tori said, the ball played across, maybe a slip ball for a 1v1. And we really just don't want to sacrifice the ability to protect the goal because it's the most important job, in my opinion, as a goalkeeper at the end of the day, is just making sure that we are in a position to protect the goal at all times when the ball's in a defensive third. The next one I have is prevent when you can and react when you must. So if I see an opportunity that I can be preventative and stop the shot from even happening or impact the ball, I'm going to leave the goal frame. If not, I'm just going to sit there and be very patient and honest with my positioning and react. The next one's a little bit more to do with like end line service and I guess as the ball gets worked down there, but it's go off the post when you can impact the ball. So your positioning obviously has to be good and you have to be in an ability or a position to react to multiple outcomes or impact multiple outcomes. And just trying to stop that ball from being slipped through, especially if it's played on the floor, because it's super dangerous. And then the last one, which we saw a few clips of, was don't leave the most dangerous area of the field for a less dangerous area of the field if I cannot impact the ball. So that clip with Allison, how he did such a good job of, he left the center of the goal frame, which is, of course, is really dangerous to leave the goal frame, and he lost his ability to protect the goal. But since he was super preventative and he made a great decision, it was a little bit easier for him to impact the cross from even happening.
I love it. It's brilliant. I think these are great. You guys, we love having Kieran on here. So if you want more Kieran, make sure you let us know. And if you are like, I only got to listen to this podcast today, make sure that you head over to Instagram, because we'll have some clips that we'll post the clips. So that way you get an opportunity to kind of see what we were talking about. If you have time to go back and watch, you can watch and follow along with the stream as well, and see us kind of go through what we're talking about. But we're trying to really give some more visuals so that way we can increase people's also help in maybe their learning style. That way there's some more ideas, a little bit more clips to give you an understanding of like exactly what are we talking about, not just trying to like imagine what we're talking about. But Kieran, I'm just so appreciative of you as a person, but just you for taking the time to come on the show. If you guys want to reach out to him, hit him up on Instagram, hit him up via email. This man loves to talk goalkeeping.
Yeah, 100%. And just before, I guess, we close it off, like, the half space is like really, it's a lot of gray area, and that's some stuff that we're trying to figure out as coaches. And I think the principles do really help us build the foundation on what we're trying to achieve when the ball's in the half space or, you know, in the box or it works towards the end line. But depending on what type of goalkeeper you are and what your strengths, maybe your positioning looks a little bit different from what you saw Mandy do today. And that's okay. There's not one way to solve all these outcomes. It really just depends on your strengths as a goalkeeper. So if anyone looks through the clips and they might have a different opinion on what me and Tori said, that's totally fine. And we love to collaborate about it and learn something.
Absolutely. Well, you guys, it's been fun. You got comments, questions, concerns, suggestions, you know where to reach me. But for now, we'll catch you later.